Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm really pleased to offer this video with Cathy Courtenay. So I'll give some context for who she is in this conversation in a second. For some housekeeping. So maybe you've noticed, but I've started to be a little bit more active on my channel as of late, now that I've completed my the writing that I did on inner and outer dialogos. So I'm going to start. I have a bunch more things planned for the channel, so keep your eyes open for that. And Circling Institute, if you're interested in checking out what we're doing in my company, the Circling Institute, the link is below. We have something open to everybody every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The link for that's below. We also have a weekend coming up, an immersion circling weekend. So if you're interested in that, the link is below. I think that's in a couple of weeks. And I'll keep you posted on things that are available. Also, if you're interested in doing one-on-one coaching with me, my email's below, and you can let me know you're interested in that, and we can talk about that. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping for now. So Cathy she's really special to me. So Cathy's I consider her one of my best friends. I just feel deeply bonded with Cathy. We have led together. We've led circling courses together. We've led a whole year-long training together, and and I think you'll see there's a particular quality of openness to her that that is quite unusual, right? And yet at the same time, an interest in moving into the areas that maybe are the most uncomfortable, yet where a lot of truth lies. And she is quite industrious, I would say. And she actually, she's got a couple of kids. She's a single mom, and she wanted to learn how to do circling, and she couldn't do the trip because we were doing all this stuff in person at that time. And so she couldn't fly out to California, but she really wanted to learn how to do it. And so we did a whole thing in North Carolina, and we started a whole program out there. And that was really through her clarity and her industriousness. So she's pretty special. This conversation, we talk about her work and the work that she's doing with couples and what she's learning. She's talking about different models of places that she's coming from in relationship. And that really opened up the conversation to talk about what it is. What is it that takes place in moments of deep connection and intimacy that transcends just you could say the benefits or the outcome of that relationship, but there's something we discuss. What is it about intimacy that's transcendent, not in just the experience of intimacy, which can be transcendent, but transcends the impact of what it takes to be intimate on the rest of our lives. And so we spend a lot of time really exploring that. And we end up talking a lot about her relationship with her daughters and what it's, how that works out in being a parent and all the complexities that come up with that and those relationships and how she works with people. Really enjoyed the conversation with her, and I've been wanting to have her on for a long time because she's just a neat person, and I think has a lot to offer. So if you're interested in contacting Cathy, and I definitely would recommend that if you want to find a work with your relationship, she's great for that. One-on-one coaching, all that. But the link for her website is below. And enjoy. Thank you for tuning in.
Gotta have something.
Absolutely. So everybody, welcome to Cathy. This is mostly what it's about, is I just wanted to welcome people to Cathy. And
Oh,
and it's great seeing you on my screen, and it's good to be on the screen. And we were just talking about, we just started getting into it. But one of the things is you and I have worked together in circling, right? We did a whole thing in Asheville for a whole year and then some. And then we just became really good friends. And now you're doing, we were just talking about the coaching work that you're doing with working with couples, and then you actually have been doing some other training. And
yes.
and what have you been like? So who were you just talking about? What was the thing that you were just talking about? Talking about like, yeah, you have a map.
Yes. Well, thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here with you too, Guy. It's always good to be with you. And yeah, I was talking about how I have been, as Guy said, teaching and working with circling as a framework, which is always kind of like a first love in a sense for me. It's just such a deep practice of being with each other and being with the moment. And I've been working with couples, and relationship has really just always been a driving force for me to understand, to shift, to have freedom, to find intimacy. And so I recently started training with a particular type of therapy called relational life therapy. And the founder of this work, the teacher of this work, his name is Terry Real, and he has been a practicing relational therapist for over 30 years. And his main sort of concept is we're living within the system of patriarchy. And there's most often in most relationships, it doesn't matter if they're heterosexual or not, but in most relationships, there's one person, and this is when things get tough. One person is one up and one person is one down. So he describes it as basically it's on a continuum of, if you look at self-esteem. So the one up is usually the grandiose person that's shameless, like their coping strategy has been to feel better than others. They typically as children, they were given like a grandiose sense of themselves. And then the one down is typically the one riddled with shame that, has a low sense of self-worth. And so in his work, he's got a very clear map of how to first empower the latent or the one down person, and then he calls joining in the truth with the one up person.
Right.
So, and what I love about his work is he's completely agendaless. I mean, I shouldn't say agendaless, but not attached to any outcome.
Right.
And in the seat of the therapist, you really practice. I mean, you're in relation too. So it's all like moment to moment, you're very relational, you reveal yourself. You come from this sort of knowing that everybody has this possibility for relational health.
Right.
And so he's got this really beautiful way of coming from love and compassion, non-attachment, but really does call people out in the truth. Right. And you can see physiologically that things really shift in the moment very dramatically. So that's what I like about it. It's this great map, but it's also very effective.
Right. And so because
often, sorry, go ahead.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I've myself over the years been in different relationship therapy, and it's not all been very effective because it's a lot of like back and forth and back and forth. And, maybe you get to understand your partner a little better, but I personally haven't necessarily been in relationship therapy that's created actual change.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So this seems to be very effective, and I'm excited because as a circler or a circling teacher, facilitator, I can bring a lot of the qualities of circling, of presence, um, being with what is,
Mhm.
paying attention to what's alive,
Right.
you know, um, in circling, we call the stage of the warrior, where we speak to dissonance, but
Yeah.
we've already created attunement and safety and trust.
Yeah.
So, a lot of those different things.
And and you said something really interesting. You said so basically what it sounds like, it's like what the thing that you're getting trained in right now is if he's got a structure where he's got some like ways of seeing typical power dynamics that happen, right?
Yeah.
And how to approach those things. Um, and it seems like I think I heard you say it's like when you've been in therapy, couples therapy, even though you understand the person better, it isn't necessarily effective, right?
Mm.
So there's something about what do you think you're seeing right now that's like what's the difference that makes it effective or not?
Yes. So in this map, he uses leverage. So, for instance, say you have somebody that is being verbally abusive. That's kind of extreme. But oftentimes, when somebody is verbally abusive, they're coming from their adaptive child, So basically, from the ages of 5 to 17, the ways we've adapted to our circumstances and our own childhood trauma and whatnot. And most people seem to be still living from this adaptive child. In fact, it's really supported in our society. I mean, look who's running our country. He's like a really adaptive child. Um, so the idea is that he works to like gain leverage. So basically, I've heard him say to this one guy, there was this model, they were doing a demo basically, and he said, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? And he was like, you're okay. The bad news is you're verbally abusive to your wife.
Mm-hmm,
And if you don't turn that around, you're going to lose her.
mm-hmm,
You're going to lose her. Is that what you want? So he first finds the leverage.
yeah,
And so he joins people in the truth, but then he's got this leverage of like, you are going to lose your relationship because he's already empowered the wife in this case to say that she's at her end, like she's about to walk out the door.
right,
So, if you want her to walk out the door, that's fine. Keep being verbally abusive. But if you don't want that,
yeah,
then he gets a contract from them right there. Like, the good news is I think you're a good person and we can really make a change here. Like, I know that you're capable of stopping these behaviors. Are you on board?
right.
And sometimes he'll like lean in and shake their hand when they say yes, like he gets a contract from them in that moment.
Hmm,
So that's kind of how he will do it, but then he's got other steps of like how eventually, after he goes through this education phase with the couple, he then makes sure that they create a support system in their community.
yeah, right.
So that's some of the ways.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, it makes sense, especially because, well, one it sounds like that that leverage piece, right, is exactly what that person doesn't have in the moments of the argument, right? Because you're making a distinction, because usually the person, there's truth to whatever the argument is, right? That's why it usually doesn't work out. It doesn't work with couples when they're in argument to work out the content, right? It's not really, that's not where the relationship is, right? And so it sounds like in the moments where he, like the husband will be verbally abusive, if he can say, hey, when you weren't feeling like this, you said this, right? And this is the thing that matters to you, right? Do you really want to like keep doing that, right?
Hmm.
And he reminds them, and it seems like I can imagine from the husband's perspective, he can give them leverage to like put their attention somewhere else, or to look at something else, or be open to something else while their defenses are so up, right? So it's
Hmm.
like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then, I mean, he'll go into early childhood work, So basically, in that next moment, he said, "Who did this to you when you were a kid?"
Mhm, mhm,
And it came out that it was his stepmother. So he said, every time you speak to your wife like this, you're
mhm,
choosing your stepmother over your relationship. Do you
mhm.
have a photograph of her? He took it to the step of like, when you feel that way, pull out the photograph and tell your stepmother, right now I'm going to choose you over my wife. Like these very sort of pragmatic tools of how to come into reality with what you're really doing in that moment. So,
Right.
this is like, I can say, so I'm in the beginning of this map. I'm finding it very interesting. I'm now learning about the relational brain and what exactly is happening moment to moment in a therapy context of,
Yeah.
how to be in the coach's seat, the therapist seat, and really foster a sense of safety, how to recognize when somebody's in their neocortical brain or the subcortical brain, and what's kind of happening moment to moment on a physiological level. So it's super fascinating. I love it.
Yeah.
So I can geek out on it all day.
Right. And I would imagine, is this one of the things that you're finding out with the neurological stuff of like, where you've actually already been related to somebody when you can like it, on a subcortical level versus a neocortex level, like you've already been on some level intuitively sensing that and responding accordingly, and now you're learning about like, oh, there's actually a something there, right, that you could measure.
Yes. And what's exciting to me, Guy, is if I could just say a little bit, and please, I'm no expert, so I just want to like make that clear. I'm just beginning. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I took anatomy physiology multiple times because I just loved it so much. And I've had a long hiatus of studying about the brain or about the body. And so I have a fascination with it, but I don't know a whole lot. But what I do understand is the subcortical brain, which includes different aspects of the subcortical brain, basically makes a decision in 1/8 of a second. So if something comes toward me, so say my partner or somebody I love says something to me, and my subcortical brain is saying this is a threat,
Yep.
if I will respond, if I don't have integration with my neocortical brain to calm my subcortical brain, then I will respond from a very reactive fight, flight, freeze, that kind of stuff. And then I'll have no access to my adult self.
Yeah.
So the key is, it's not that doesn't stop happening. In contrast, your neocortical brain is a much slower processing aspect of your brain. And it makes a decision. I think it's like 2 to 3 seconds versus an eighth of a second. So if I get that same stimulus that created an affect from my subcortical brain, the part of my neocortex can calm it and make a sort of wise adult decision in response. And that's when the brain is integrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're creating new pathways as you learn to integrate the brain more. It actually also reminds me of, like, I don't know a whole lot about attachment theory, but I think it would be like what would feel more like your nervous system is more soothed. There's more like of a secure bond and whatnot. But what I want to get to is I think that in circling over time, that's what's happening on a brain level, is that we're learning to integrate those different aspects of the brain so that the kind of more adult self can soothe the part that's feeling wounded and reactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then have more effective, like, stay in the moment, present and relational.
Right. It's interesting because that makes sense, especially if I bring it in that other thing that you just said, where, here's Bob, who's like, you know, right and justified and maybe is even correct in what he's saying, right? And then he starts yelling. And then the therapist is there. You're sitting there like, hey, you remember, right? Some level, it gives him leverage to be like, okay, like deal with this impulse, right? And go back and like stop and like actually look, right? Because it does seem like the one of the big things I've often thought about the brain, looking at things from a brain perspective, like the amygdala seems. I think it's talked about that the amygdala gives you like a warning, right? And I think that if you have like perhaps like a lot of trauma, right, where the warning it gave you, right, um, was true on some level, right, but partial, and but if the warning or your freak out when you were a kid never got responded to as you're freaking out, let's like check out reality and see if you are right. If you, for example, if the people who were supposed to help you like check out reality were the ones hurting you, right,
Yeah.
you never really get to, because I think the amygdala and all those subcortical regions are actually not giving you statements about it's dangerous. I think it's supposed to say, ask you a question. Is this dangerous? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so just getting to the point where you can actually feel that and then have it be a question that you then engage, right, the neocortex to actually look at that. Well, maybe it is dangerous, maybe it's not. Just that little frame seems like a big difference to me.
Yeah.
Seems like a big difference.
I think in my experience, I think in the practice of circling, that's something that we develop.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, I think it's especially because I would say if you look at the structure of circling, it has a lot to do with being in someone's attention, right? And being honest about what's happening, but also being visible in your attention. And all the different things that can happen when you pay attention to me are also all the things that so what is one of the things I've always said about this is what makes connection so interesting. Interesting is a good way of putting it, right? It's like you could say something to me that can reveal a truth about my life that'll change everything, right? Like we're so radically open to each other, right? That you can make sounds with your face, point them in my direction, right? And I can hear them. I can even hear it wrongly, have it reveal something true about me that is, there's a radical openness that we have to each other, right? Which is, so anything, yeah, it's circling really is about doing that consciously on purpose and being
Yeah.
with just the thing that's like tolerating the possibilities within that intersubjective kind of space. That's a lot to deal with, if you ask me.
Geez, I notice over here as you're saying that, like a burning inside of me, which occurs like just the weight of responsibility being human and using words in the face of another human that has anything to do with them. Even if we're like fully owning our experience, you know, one of my I notice I'm very sensitive to when people make assertions. They make truths about me or about others that feel like those have a lot of power, but they may not be accurate and they're not owning that that's their experience. I feel like that can have a strong impact on others, you know. The words we say have such impact on others, such that it can actually change the course of one's life.
Yeah.
If depending on their level of openness, right? Because not all of us have, certainly not everybody walks around as open as you and I. Like, I think we both noticed a while back when we did that Jordan Peterson personality test.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my level of my percentile of openness was something ridiculous, like 98. Like I was in the 98th percentile.
We both came back and had a warning almost like, uh-oh.
Caution exclamation that came up against it. Like, so not everybody is as open as you and I may be, but still, even so, we have such uh, there's such possibility for deep impact on
Yeah.
one another.
Yeah.
Deep impact. You know?
Right. And what I'm also hearing is, and also there's the whole element of like that we could have deep impact on each other, and I could even have the intention to have a particular impact on you, right? And it ends up you can mishear me, right? I'll never forget. I tell you, really, I think I've told you this. Where my dad had this story where he's been sober in AA for a billion years, and somebody came up to him in a meeting, and apparently he used to sponsor him, and they had lost touch with each other. And he comes up to my dad and he's like, "Oh my God, this thing you said to me, I haven't been able to like reach you since, but like it has changed my life. I never is this whole thing where like it changed his entire life. His relationship with his kids are better, and he moved and all this kind of stuff." And he's like, I just have to thank you. And and then he walks away. And my dad is like, he misheard what I said.
Oh my God. Like that is hilarious. And you have to kind of just chalk it off to like he heard what he needed to hear
Exactly.
in that moment.
Exactly.
Apparently, I guess there's a certain amount of needing to let go and trust
Right.
that,
Right.
people will take what they need, let go of what they don't.
Yeah. And so the way in which to be open, you know, it's there's if you look at all of the possibility that you open to when you open up to another person, right? Like there's a sense in which it's not even like a direct causal relationship, right? Where I say something to you and like you may hear it really accurately, but then I actually didn't understand what I said to you. I didn't understand it, right? It's not a direct causal thing. But there's a, but especially I would say, like a little bit outside of a like a psychological viewpoint, like on a one of the things I've appreciated about doing this paper that I wrote, right, this chapter, right, on dialogos, is just really getting that the what we call the world, right? When I say the world, when I say like my guy's life and guy's world, and we talk about the world, right? This kind of horizon, right? That everything that I call anything is somehow in it's this world of intelligibility. And we say, okay, 1800s, it was a different world, right?
Yeah.
2020, it's the world we're in, right? There's a different world. Well, what is that world and how does it change and what is that difference? And when you really look at that, what you realize is that the world unfolds as intelligibility via discourse, right? Like how does the wisdom or lack of wisdom of a culture, or how does a tradition continue to unfold over time or change over time, and what is the medium upon which it does that, right? Well, it's the medium of basically the way things show up as intelligible. Well,
Mhm.
how does that how does that go on? It's through conversation, right? It's through interaction, like it's through discourse. So I think writing that really had me get, I think, a deep. Well, first I started understanding more about like, well, why is my attention so much gone into relationship, right? And I think I got more of a hit of like, well, it seems like if you're going to look at if you're going to change anything, right? The changing of such will have the biggest difference. It seems that if you change the structure of the way people communicate with one another, you will in fact change the world, right? And I
Yeah.
say that with some, I personally say that with humility, because I don't even know, it's not like the change in the structure of the relationship that I think will make a big difference could actually just fuck everything up. And you wouldn't find out until like 5 traditions after I die, right? You look at Karl Marx, I think I don't know what Marx would say about what happened with communism, but, but just the sense of the awareness of discourse.
Yeah.
And then you look at our time and the way social media has really dramatically changed the structure of the way that we discourse, right? We have that.
It really has.
Hmm.
You know what's coming up for me in hearing you is it's a it's this fine line, because if you, okay, let me see if I can form this thought. It's just coming to me like you're saying, it's like it's arising in me in this moment and I don't quite know the words yet, so I'm going to give it a shot. But if I hold a particular view, and let's say maybe it's kind of a rigid view, because let's just, from a personal standpoint, I came from an extremely rigid paradigm.
Yeah.
And so, in a rigid paradigm, which can look different ways for different, rigid belief system, rigid culture, rigid anything.
Where you came from, South Africa, right? Where
I
you're.
came from South Africa. So, like, think, British post colonial,
Mhm.
very much into politeness, how you're perceived, right way, wrong way, so on and so forth. So if the discourse remains in that context,
Mhm.
there's this very limited,
Mhm.
you're just basically perpetuating that context or that paradigm, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm struck by in our conversation is there's this fine line between driving discourse or like coming from a particular place and then
Mm.
surrendering and letting go and staying open, that allows or disallows uh, creativity, newness,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
shifting, new paradigms, new contexts created. Um, and I find myself actually, now that we're talking about it, I find myself playing with that
Yeah.
quite a bit when I'm talking to people. There's this sense of, I know my context, I know my background influences, let's say. I'm very weary of them on one hand, but I still know that they're you know, they create they're still in the background, in the fabric of me or something. So I'm weary of them, but there's also thing like, what am I trying to say? I'm weary of them. I notice I don't want them to influence what is revealed.
Yeah.
Part of it is me, part is not.
Mhm.
I also have things that I do believe in or that do feel strong, but I'm also very much committed and value something new.
Yeah.
Are you following me?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel extremely invested in what is wanting to reveal itself, yet I feel limited by my background and where I currently
Mhm.
find myself on my own frontier of like what I can let go of, what I can hold, what I can participate in.
Yeah. And so there, you're basically, I think what I'm hearing you say is you're open. You started off by saying, I think what you're saying is, yeah, not so much. It's not, I want to drive something forward with relationship, right? And
Oh,
make something. So, but you said, no, I really want to, but I want to open to something being possible, right? And that sometimes this background that I don't, I'm suspect of a lot because it's, it's like I'm this big and it's this big and that causes problems, right?
lots of them.
Yeah. So there's a, but you want to open to something relationally. You want to be open to something that you can't foresee, but
Right.
but you are present enough to that something is possible, right? That you can open to it. Because it's an interesting question. It's like, what am I open to if I'm open to what I don't know yet? Which is, which I think is precisely, I really, this is where I hear, at least my own personal experience with leading circles. That's the sensibility of circling, precisely in that your, I think it's one of the things that is the skill, if you want to call it that, which is an attunement to something new emerging. Right? So basically, it's attuning to something new emerging that where you sense a sense of moreness or an intelligibility that gathers, and you can open to it and welcome it and like invite it forward, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're kind of going really meta,
Mm-hmm.
but when we bring it back to relationship,
Mm-hmm.
um, what does that mean? And it means, if I think about my daily life and who I'm relating to,
Mm-hmm.
I've got the clients that I work with, I have the, folks coming to me for circling, but then I have my relationship and I have my daughters and I have my family and I have my friends. And what I'm really interested in is how to let me see if I can put this in words, like how to continue to engage in these sorts of, you use the word discourse, how to bring language and stay fresh and alive to even what's wanting to emerge that's new with my daughters, with my, partner. I think it's probably hardest with my kids
Yeah.
because I don't know about you, Guy, but you're constantly having to catch up in a way to where your child is, like a new seeing. You just think you get to make sense of who they are in the world. And like you adjust,
Yeah.
to that new, like the meaning we make, or the sense making that we make about our children, and then they change again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on some level, I'm responsible for parenting them, which I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck that means. But, you know, and to stay, like, to continue to stretch myself to stay present to what is now and now and now. And it seems to be constantly changing.
Right. Well, just when I was getting used to his bleached pink hair,
He had bleached pink. That's awesome.
then became this thing where I was like, wait a minute, did you get braces? And he has this thing underneath his lips that I keep thinking, oh, he got braces. And then it's this thing, it's like a earring.
Got a grill.
Yeah.
Oh, a piercing, like
Yeah.
a piercing.
Is that, is that a little bit like what you mean is like what they're,
Yeah,
right? Is so different.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Or like, I'm trying to make sense of the fact that my daughter, who's like super liberal and headstrong and all this stuff, decided to get a job at Dunkin' Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
And having this whole experience of what it's like to be amongst people that she has never experienced before. I live in like, these people are like country, no offense to anybody, but
Yeah.
they've grown up with like serious trauma. None of them have gone to college. There's like many different family members all working in the same shift.
Yeah.
And most of them are extremely like right wing,
Mm-hmm.
but she's finding super, like she's super energized about getting to understand the other side, like this whole population of people that she's never been exposed to before. And somehow,
It really
what's that?
makes me miss your daughter.
Oh, she's so freaking awesome.
Great.
She's awesome. And she's really like having these mind blowing experiences and really loving working at this silly drive through, like Dunkin' Donuts, like seeing a part of society that she's never been exposed to before.
Right.
So that's a different aside. But I think for me, like,
Yeah.
continuing to stay fresh and open and like, agile and like, where am I holding tight? Where am I not like hearing? Where am I attaching,
So what is it like? What is it like having your daughter work at Dunkin' Donuts? What's
Well,
it?
I definitely was kind of shocked at first. I almost found myself wanting to steer her away from that, like, what are you doing? Really? Like, seriously? Um, but so I didn't say any of that because I noticed those were all my assumptions and judgments.
Yeah. Well, it
And
sounds like just that right there. What I'm hearing is like just that wanting to say it, but choosing not to say that and wait. I just got this sense of like waiting, being like, okay, well, let's open up to that. I'll keep my judgments to myself and open to what she's up to. is that one way that you kind of catch up to what she's looking at and where she's seeing and as a parent?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that right there to me, I think that's kind of rare. Like
Really?
yeah, I think that's pretty rare. Like one is just to have the distinction that the things that are coming up for you are things in you. It's not necessarily the world, right? I think just having that kind of discernment between my judgments about things and the way things actually are, to have that space, especially when you have a visceral, because I don't think there's any way of getting around like the biological in a way for like being a mother especially. I think the kind of like hormonal nervous system orientation, like keep her safe, right? Is just you got billions of years cooking through you with that one. Right?
Yeah.
On some level, those judgments probably are in relationship to protecting her, and then pausing and then keeping them to yourself on purpose, and then seeing what happens. I think that's pretty rare.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, I think the gift that I'm seeing in it is what is showing instead being that I've paused and like held back and waited.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting the gift of seeing my kids see these really big things through her own eyes and her own experience. And she's looking at capitalism and she's looking at the food industry and she's looking at, like, Mom, I don't see how people can work really, really hard, get paid minimum wage, and have to live in a trailer. Something about that feels extremely off to me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I didn't tell her that, but because I held back, she's getting a visceral experience of the injustice of that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
And and she's teaching me, and I'm seeing her, and like it's really ends up being such a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what that brings up for me, Guy, is, I mean, like you said, as a mom, the protection hormones and the biology and the genetics and just the ancestral, just all of the urges within myself and in mothers and parents in general,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a basic instinct to override. But I see too, like, I work with a mother and a daughter, and I work with them separately.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm seeing is there is such intelligence in these young kids. There's this intelligence that's inherent, that if you give it space, it actually has
Yep.
its own unfolding.
Yeah.
And the process of trying to put it in a box,
Mm-hmm.
which is common. That's what we want to do as parents, because it feels like safety, there's security, there's, something known in a sense. But if you actually like challenge yourself to see the box and step outside the box, and allow some of the intelligibility to unfold,
Yeah.
whoa, then it's more than you can imagine. It's more than you can control. It's more than you can manage. It's more than you can predict.
Yeah.
And I believe that's true for all relationships in a sense, but it feels most strong in the dynamic for me with my daughters. And
Right. Wow. That's
yeah.
really cool. I think it's really pausing. And in this case, it's like watching her start to have like like to actually think about what she's seeing, right? So she's taking this initiative. She wants to move towards something that she's not familiar with, and then she starts to see the facts as they unfold, and then she has these questions about, this seems unjust, right? Like where is exactly the injustice of this? There's just something seems bad about like having to do this if you have to do this, right? And so you're watching, that what you made is like her responding to the world on her own in that way.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think we often, in our need to control,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'll say as parents, but this happens in all relating. You know, there's a certain unknown entity and it feels unsafe. And so we try to control. But what we end up doing is like really losing out on the benefits of the intelligibility of something, that it has like this life that's,
Yeah.
has a timing and has an opening and has a movement.
Yeah. Totally.
Which, when you're in the presence of that and you actually witness that, I think I can safely say that you you too appreciate that with a lot of depth, like to be a witness to the unfolding of the
Somebody,
thing unfold.
right. It's like as well, it's like witnessing a miracle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that. It's interesting because looking at like when I've looked at having kids again and stuff, right? That, you know, what are you really deciding when you decide to have a kid? If you really look, you're basically deciding, you're making a choice to be open to like giving birth to meaning. It's like you're looking at meaning itself, right? Right? And you're looking at meaning that on some level, that thing that you just talked about, parenting is this strange place where through the course of the time you want to leave them as open as possible to the world and as safe as possible at the world, and deal with your own psychology in the face of that. Right? And finding that
Mhm.
balance. Well, why would you even do that? Well, it's because on some level you have something in front of you that is like priceless in preciousness, right? Is you have somebody who's free, who's to meaning itself is what you're basically looking at when you look at another human being. So to give birth to that, right? The humongous responsibility.
So
And
much suffering.
what else would you want to do?
Right. You're
Right?
basically signing up for some of life's deepest suffering, fear,
Yeah.
heartache, but also it's there's something more valuable and worthy that has it, so that has you signing up for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I could totally see her, by the way. I could totally see her like making a choice to work, like to work there and to like observe all that, even for that sake, wanting to, and then be, she's so cool.
It's super cool.
This,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about like how to translate that to actual like intimate relationships, because
Mm-hmm.
I think there too, what happens, I don't, again, I don't really know what I'm going to say, but there's something very important that can be learned around this stuff in intimate relationships that I think then have an impact on the world around us.
Yeah. What do you sense about that?
Okay, well, look, if we go back to leverage, everybody, what I imagine is, so when relationships are not working, um, there's a lot of suffering around that. And there's lots of reasons why relationships don't work, but there's a lot of things that we get caught in, like being able to listen, getting somebody else's perspective, gaining more trust and safety, secure attachment bonding, just all those different things. Once we have, if we really put effort in being better listeners, better partners,
Mhm.
being more flexible and open, a willingness to continue to look outside the box, a willingness to continue to open, a willingness to get curious about somebody else, and really understand these skills and capacities that we have to grow to be better in relationship. Like, you end up doing it everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, that's my thought. So like,
right.
it has a lot of meaning in relationship. There's a lot of value and weight in creating joy in your life, having good relationships.
Yeah.
But then you become a changed person that then affects how you treat your neighbor, or how you know show up in your community.
So you're saying like that there's something about like there's the part on the level of like, okay, if we get better at relating to our family and the people and our friends, that just improving that alone is going to like obviously shift the quality of your life. But you're bringing in something else here. You're basically saying like, no, there's something that happens through being a better communicator, through having more intimacy, through being more open to your kids and finding that balance and working through your stuff. That when you're there's something that happens to one through what it takes to be good at those things, right? Such that when you're walking around in the world, something happens there that you
Yeah.
carry. Yeah. What do you think that is? I'm enjoying tracking the movement of your body, heart, insightful mind.
I'm enjoying it too, because I feel like I'm a little all over the place. So I'm really grateful for you kind of honing it in. And
Yeah.
we didn't really have a strong plan for this conversation. And, it feels good to kind of meander, but I think there's a general something that we're touching on. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm actually following the movement of the conversation and actually where your mind's going right now and what's occurring for you, right? Because you're
Oh,
basically yeah, basically what I'm hearing you say is like you're tracking at one level, you're doing this work with couples, right? And and then there's another part where it's like, well, why am I interested in that even in the first place, right? And there's something that happens through that, right? That has a more meta or a bigger picture that has implications for that.
yeah,
Feels like the telos
yeah,
of this conversation.
yeah. So recently, I recognized, and this is not the first time I've recognized this, but I visited. The thing that really hurts me the most is when I hear lack of understanding between people, and the amount of pain and suffering that can happen just by misunderstanding or not getting or not taking the time to creates enormous suffering in the world.
Mm,
Enormous.
mm,
I mean, that's what I see. Like, even if you take it to like some injustices that are happening in the world, or ways people are speaking about the other, or ways that they see them and make assumptions. And there's something about that for me. I can remember since I was a kid that when I heard other people talk about either groups of people or individuals,
yeah.
I always like felt pain around like that person not being understood, and there has to be a deeper, like a deeper context to why
Mm.
these things are occurring that are creating dissonance, suffering, all that kind of stuff. So that's just like in the background for me. That's a driving force, and that always has been, to like create more compassion and understanding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But being in relationship, whether it's intimate or like a sexually intimate relationship, or intimate with a child or a mother or whatever, really drives us to look at, like, to look at ourselves, but that's not quite the right words, but like
Mhm.
to create more intimacy, we have to, like, it feels like by the nature of who we are, we have to transcend ourselves.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah. Light bulbs just went off for me. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, we can choose to not, and then we have a certain like level of life,
Mhm.
that's like blah. And some people do that, and that's fine. People can get to do that. But if you want more, and if you want aliveness in your life, if you want joy, if you want depth, if you want passion, if you want creativity, if you want more, you have to transcend yourself and your circumstances and your psyche and you have to.
Right.
So,
Right.
in the process of doing that, as I transcend myself,
Mhm.
um, I'm also inherently changing the way I relate to life and everything that's included in life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So there's something about, so what I just heard there, I could see, actually, let's see if I did hear it. What it takes to be intimate with the people in my life, right? It's not what I heard you say is it's impossible to be intimate and in this case we were talking about, especially when I don't understand, to actually understand, right? Um, and even if I don't agree with what I'm understanding, open to you as such, right? To understand you, that there's a the machinery I use for that, right, is the same. It's the transcendent machinery, right? Intimacy
Mm-hmm.
is a form of transcendence, and,
Yeah.
and that there's, well, like when you talk about like, and that's a non-local occurrence by definition. You're transcending what's local or the particular problem or argument or the content of it, and you're going deep into it and then somehow seeing more, feeling more, experiencing more through it. And that that there's something about there's the muscles that works. Just like when you're done, maybe I often think about when you're done with a yoga class, right? When you're not thinking about yoga walking down the street, you're just more balanced and open in your body. There's
Yeah.
something about what it takes to be intimate that is also what it takes to be with the world as such, right? That openness translates into being open in multiple contexts in ways that are probably hard to predict.
Yes. And in order to be intimate, or to like grow in intimacy, ultimately it requires gaining some freedom from ourselves, from the, like, from the binds that have, you know that we've created, the binds that we've created through life circumstances growing up, so just by the nature of being with another in that way, I have to move through some of those binds. Some people may call that trauma. We may call it strategy, like coping strategies, whatever it is, the things that have kept us safe,
Yeah.
seeming safe. Like you have to be with them in a profound way and move beyond them in order to really be in this interdependent um, relational, true relational field where you and I are same as, you're not better, I'm not worse, so on and so forth. We're in a more of an interdependent like flow state. But I have to, the more like I have to gain freedom from some of the binds that have not allowed that in the past. And so once I do, then I no longer look at, um, I no longer look at the same, I can no longer look at the world in the same way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So that like, that feels for me like the bigger, like the meta drive for me is to help shift,
right.
help transcendence, to help people transcend through the vehicle of relationship. And I feel, yeah, that's just my place in the world, you know?
Yeah, totally. I love this. I love the thing that you're talking about. Um, I mean, I share your intuition about it.
Yeah.
Just the
What
quality.
else do you love? Sorry. What else do you love about that? Like, how do you know you love that? And what would you say in your words about it?
Well, yeah, I think one of the reasons I think, for example, people think that like people oftentimes assume with me that I really like people,
I know better.
right? And that I just must really just like people in general or something like that. And I don't think I like or don't like people more than anybody else. Um, with circling, I think what is shined forth to me isn't as a result of liking people. It's actually what it takes to know somebody, right? I have found to be deeply transcendent, right? Um, and yeah, the ability to look at the world and have the set, like whatever it is that's intelligible about it, that's beyond my particular frame of reference, right? It's that thing that has it glow through that 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 is actually the thing that I love, right? And there's just nothing like relationships that will just bring in every ounce of like every way that you don't want to do that. It's like what it's like in the face of you not giving me anything I want and like I don't feel understood or whatever, like can I still open to you in a particular way, right? In the face of that, can I still see you not beyond my own conceptions of you? Because I think
Yeah.
there really is that sense in which I still I still don't know exactly when I'm talking to you and I say I see you. I don't really know what I mean by you. Like
Mhm.
it's very easy to categorize people. It's very easy. And oftentimes you should. Like we live with 8 billion people, right? There's like all kinds of reasons why like we have filters and judgments and stuff like that. They're not all negative, right? But
Right.
when it matters and when I want to, like, can I open up to you, right? And it seems that there's a place where when we open up to another person, you're I it's basically there's this process of like really opening something beyond, yeah, my conception of you, my image of you, right? I'm opening up to I think intelligibility itself, right? A sense of beingness. Um, that
Yeah.
something beyond
Yeah.
my own mind, right? That you can start to access that. And that's like the reward from that is for me, I think it's just like it has me live with, I think I just become a better person, right? Overall, I think the world becomes a lot more interesting place. I think I think you end up the responses. If I just like kind of look at my own life, the responses that I have from other people and the life that I've created and all of that stuff, right, seems to be opening up possibilities and ways of life that are, I don't think would be there otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
think I
jiving
agree.
with your sensibility.
Say that again.
In other words, I'm jiving with your sensibility around this.
I think that's the reason that you and I have connected so deeply so quickly is that we recognize that there's like a similar um, bias, or not really a bias, but just a deep interest and desire for that which you just spoke of, for the thing that's wanting to be revealed, you know.
Absolutely.
And that, like, you know, I find myself strangely fascinated by dissonance and difficulty. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, I don't consider myself a disharmonious kind of person. In fact, I would like to, I was just, I'd sometimes like to find more of my inner bitch, to be honest. Like, you know, I'm soft by nature,
Yeah.
yet I I find myself moving toward some of that, like, disruption. And I wouldn't say it's drama, because I stay away from drama for the most part. But when there's that tension or that disruption or that moment before an opening, or,
Yeah. Is that
you know,
is that the sign of the thing emerging? Is that one of the ways that you? Mhm, mhm.
do you do you relate to that?
Like the I like the look on your face that came over in that moment. You're
What
like,
was it like?
I'm like, is that the sign? And you're like,
I was like revealing a crush on somebody or something. Yeah, I do love that kind of stuff.
mm-hmm,
I do love that. And I love watching it, being in the seat of coach
mm-hmm,
and watching some of the uh like both the revealing and then the some of the when things start shedding from, like, a couple I'm working with, you know, the truth comes out, like the truth gets revealed, and then it's out there explicit.
yeah,
And then you watch like a little bit of chaos, a little bit of discombobulation. You can almost see it in the entire body of somebody. And then there's a moment of like,
oh,
even if the truth is difficult,
great,
there's there's this moment of breath, like thank goodness, you know. Like,
great,
we can all be in reality in this moment. We're all in this present moment reality. And even if it's tough to see, even if it's the thing I've been avoiding, there's like there's a relief, there's a settling, there's a breath, there's a freshness. And I love that moment.
yeah, yeah. I think that I think what you're describing, because I've seen you 1,000 times be, what about, right? Like, you know, so soft way, basically ask the most difficult question or point to the most difficult thing.
Oh, Guy, is it that bad?
It's that good, right? It's that good, I'd say. But yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is you essentially love the truth,
Yeah.
but in the not the truth that's correct or right, but the truth that's revealed. Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience so far, I I noticed that others seem to like it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think even in the moment of that truth becoming explicit,
Mm-hmm.
things start to, I imagine, like a cascade of physiological events that occur when that truth becomes explicit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know exactly what's happening neurologically in the body, but I know for me, something, there's some sort of synergy that's happening on a physiological level. And I imagine in that moment, there's a, like a shuffling of some things, like a reorganizing of, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the physiology.
Right. Right. I just sense that. And it's the truth of, it's that sense of, well, like I wrote like a tweet today. I hardly ever tweet, but somebody was
You're
talking.
on days. Oh my God.
I really
Look
don't.
at you.
But I was somebody who was I heard somebody talking about tweeting, and I was like, I had this thought and it was about thinking and tweeting or something. So I wrote this tweet of just today. It's like, it isn't me, or does it seem like all the good stuff is hidden or
Oh my God. That's true.
but it's like I think that's what I think that's your I sense is like the thing that you're like, if you see concealment, if you see somebody's defenses, or if you see something unsaid, right, that it's unsaid, you're not the why it's humorous, what we're laughing at, right, is that it may look like you're just into just discomfort, but you're but no, it's like what the discomfort's linked to. And I think what you sense, right, is that no, like the good stuff is actually that which is most enigmatic. It's the most concealed. It's the most paradoxical, right? And that if you just turn towards the hard thing, right? In other words, it's like another way of saying that is like the most richest existential, ontological, all those words, right? Revealing are it takes something for that to disclose itself, and that if we attune to that, I think this is what you were saying, is that, and it's a mutual disclosure, because
Yes.
if I turn towards like, no, I really want to hear your truth, let's say, right,
Yeah.
and even if it's the last thing I want to be true, right, I want to hear it, right, and I want to open up to it, right, and there's a there's a sense about whatever that is that the truth is going to be good because by virtue of it being the truth, right, and me leaning into that and becoming someone who would be open to the last thing I want to hear on some level by virtue
Yeah.
of it, with it'll not only reveal more of the truth, but also I'll end up being mutually my character. I mean, I think the character that I get to become through opening to the truth also, it creates character, right?
Yeah.
Right. So there's this like, oh, the thing that's difficult. It's like, let's open that up. Let's press that button, right? Because I know that even if it's not what I like, right? It's not what I want. Um, there's a sense of moreness. There's a truth that ultimately is something that I trust.
Yeah, it may not be the thing that a part of me wants,
Yeah.
but I think when we tap into, like, you know, the self with a capital S, most people, I think, want that truth. But if there's a, there's a particular part that doesn't want it. So, but I love what you said. It's a very mutual experience. It's not like I'm sitting there thinking I know the truth. I never feel like, oh, I know the truth here and I'm just going to wait to reveal it. It's literally a collaborative mutual experience that we're all in together. And my clients may not know that that's what it is. It's not like I made that part explicit, but that's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like in the process of being together, it reveals itself. And I'm just here to like to point at it, but I haven't, and then to help people to feel that truth in their body, to like, I help guide them, but it's not like I'm sitting there knowing the truth at all. But I name it when I see it, when it reveals itself. And then it becomes like, oh, we're all sitting in it. And there's a timing to it. And there's, and yes, there's like I have deep trust in that. And I think circling for quite a while has helped build that trust, because I've sat in circle upon circle where that's just, there's been lots of evidence of that, of like when the truth is revealed, the impact that has can only be good.
Right. I like the thing that you said. It seemed like it revealed it more, which was, it's not like I know the truth, right? It's not like I know what's going to be revealed. It's more like I've been able to attune to notice when some things maybe looks concealed, right? And then I'll move towards that and go, what's that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like you know what that is, but you know that it seems like if we move towards what's most relevant, like the thing that's shining forth the most uncomfortable or the most salient, or that if we open that up, it's the realm of the truth, right? But it's not like you know exactly what's going to happen when you press that button. In fact, it's like precisely what's kind of cool. You don't know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
but you know
No.
the request for whatever's really on the other side of that to come forward. That's the thing that you're inviting.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
And yeah, so one other thing I wanted to say about that is people will often ask, how is it that you can sit either in a circle and get somebody's world for 45 minutes, or do this work and not get completely drained? And that is exactly how, because I'm nourished by that revealing and the truth and that process that we've been speaking about. It's life-giving. So I never feel depleted.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I really never do. Like I feel I could do this. There may be a time where I need a break, but in general, it is life-giving to be sitting in that process of being with what wants to be revealed.
it's like there's an inexhaustibility, right, of nourishment just sitting in that open place and being willing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, because like it's interesting to ask ourselves this question. I just thought about like people. I just remembered that we're actually recording something. I forgot about that. But I remember that, and I thought to myself, God, it'd be interesting if people heard what you just said and then thought about the places where they feel exhausted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where do they feel like that they're bored, or they're like depleted, in what relationships and what things?
Yeah.
And to start to like as a question, to start to inquire about, well, it may not be that that thing is just intrinsically boring. It may be actually that there's something concealed, right?
Mm-hmm. or you're not necessarily listening or tuning to the right part of it. Like your
Right.
attention in a place of that's not that.
Exactly. And which is cool because it's then you're bringing, I always like it when I find out I'm part of my own suffering, right? Like, because if I'm not, I'm fucked, right? Like, but if I'm the source of my own suffering, right? If like, whenever I'm like not, I'm struggling with something and I can't, when I see that it's actually the way I'm being with something or the way I'm attending to something or what I'm not seeing, right? That's always good news for me. I don't always,
Yes.
right? But it's always good news for me. Yeah.
It is good. It's in the realm of, I guess, control, that you can control yourself and how you attend to things and where you put your attention. And that's about it.
And that's just one of the things about, I think, what we're talking about with circling and relationships in general. It really is a realm that you can't control. Like in a very real way. I'm not saying that people can't, obviously people can manipulate other people, but when it really comes down to I think at the deepest level, I for you to open up and understand me, right, is really something I can't do for you, right? For me to like receive what you're saying in a genuine way and really open to it, like it's something only I can do. Like you can't reach into me and give me the experience of understanding you, right? And it's I think that's one of the more frustrating things about relationships is that like we actually don't want people to be free. Right? We want people to like we want to make them understand us because then da, 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 da. But really when it comes down to it, there is, I think that there's some phenomenologically I can like tie you up, I can like control all these things, but how you see, how you're experiencing, what it means to you about what I'm ultimately I don't have direct control over. It's like there is a place where we're really free. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's when you get down to that level of intimacy, it's that experience of feeling understood and being understood, right? Or being honest and open and having it be received and reciprocated. There really is a place where it's like if I don't want to be here, right? I have to really want to be here. Like I can't I can't make you want to be here. Like there is a place where it's not conceptual. There's a real being over there. Mhm.
Yeah. There's also there's also has to be that intimate and to be that open and vulnerable without the assurance of being gotten or understood, because I cannot control you in how you receive me, requires such a deep level of vulnerability, but also like faith and trust and value in something bigger than we have say so over.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but in those moments where you feel understood, seen, gotten, um those are like those moments make it all worthy, really, to have that kind of union
Yeah.
and like a moment of like
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. It's not even like it's not feeling alone, because some people will report like, oh, I feel less alone. Yeah, that's maybe it, but that's not quite it. It's something more than that. It's I don't know what it is, to be honest, but that feeling of being joined or like seen or without having had any control over it, and um, is worth all of the vulnerability and anxiety and
Yeah.
whatever else, all the other sort of
Right,
hoops you have to go through to get there.
right. I know what you mean. I want to, I know, I think I know what you mean. And I know it's this place where it's more like there's the experience, for example, of being seen, right?
Mhm.
Like finally. I mean, we could talk about that, what that is for a billion years. Like that's fascinating, right? About like what does it mean to be seen and like why is it so important? And then there's this place where there's the quality that just happened, right? That's I could be deeply seen and gotten in that way. There's this other thing that there's this other experience about it, this kind of open place that I think you're pointing to, which I'm wondering if it has to do with, I think for me, there's something like something gets restored about existence. It's almost like the sense of like that was even possible um, allows me to have a better, be more open to the universe. That the universe allows that to happen, that's possible,
Yeah.
something like faith. That's faith, it's faith restored. Mhm.
I think you're onto something. I mean, it's almost like being seen by God.
Yeah,
You know, if you use such a word, um, it's like being seen in the face of God or something like that.
totally. Well, speaking about being seen in the face of God, is there, this has been really great.
Yeah, it has. I, I hope people who listen to this can follow us and make sense of what we're saying. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. So is, if they want to reach you, because you're actually seeing clients, right? Right now, you're taking clients. Okay.
Mhm. I'm taking clients and teach relational courses and things like that. So if people want to get a hold of me, they can contact me through my website, which is just cathycourtenay.com. Maybe you can put that in the link below.
The links below.
And I see both couples and individuals, um, and moms and daughters and different types of relationships. And yeah, I'm happy to do a consult for folks and have different ways that they can engage with me.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
put all that in the show notes.
Yeah. And it has been such a pleasure to explore this conversation with you. It's been a while.
Totally. Love you.
I love you so much. Take care. Bye.